Welcome back to Newport once again, everybody, where Australian tennis legend Leighton Hewitt is about to become a Hall of Famer. Did you know that over the years, just 267 people from throughout the history of this beautiful sport have been the recipient of this tennis's ultimate honor, Hall of Fame induction? Hailing from a storied tennis nation, of course, Leighton joins the ranks of tennis's elite as the 34th Australian to be inducted here. To officially present Leighton to the International Tennis Hall of Fame, here are some special words from two fellow Aussie legends.
G'day, I'm John Newcombe, and together with Tony Roach, we were named as the captain and coach of the Australian Davis Cup team in the 1990s, and we had two pretty good rookies to start with, Pat Rafter and Mark Philippoussis. And then, Tony, a couple of years into the job, we picked a young Aussie, 15 years of age, to be a squad member.
Yeah, Leighton Hewitt. I remember the first meeting I had with Leighton was at a charity event in Adelaide. He must have been about 12 or 13, and I was very impressed with his game, even at that early age. But I was more impressed with his mullet haircut, really. All the Adelaide kids seem to have these great mullet haircuts, but yeah, Leighton, you could tell, was going to be something special.
The first time I had anything really to do with Leighton was when he came over to my tennis ranch in Texas, 14 years of age, with a bunch of other young Aussies to spend a month training and playing tournaments. And he came up to me one day and said, I'd like to interview you. I said, oh, what for? He said, I've got a project I'm doing, and could I interview you? I said, sure. When do you want to do it? He said, well, I'm ready now. So I sat down, and he had 25 questions already written down that he asked me. So that was a good idea of how organised he was. But Tony, in that first time that he was joined the team as a squad member, I remember Pat always used to ask to practice with him.
Yeah, Leighton, even at 15, he was an exceptional player, and Pat always asked to practice with Leighton because he loved his high intensity. He gave him good rhythm, didn't miss a ball the whole practice session. So Pat could even tell at that early age that he was something very special.
So he travelled with us all the time, and he couldn't get a job to play singles. He was just like a squad member. And then in 1999 at Wimbledon, Mark Philippoussis injured his leg, and Leighton had gone back to Adelaide, and I called him up and said, hey, mate, are you ready to play? And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, Mark's injured. I need you to get on a plane straight away and fly to Boston. You're going to be playing in the Davis Cup semi-final, Davis Cup quarter-final at the Longwood Cricket Club. And he did a great job there, didn't he?
Well, that was a very special occasion because it was the centenary of the Davis Cup. But Leighton showed up and came out on the first day and defeated Todd Martin, who was a top 10 player at the time, and beat him in 4 sets, and that really set the ball rolling for Australia to go on and win that tie.
Yeah, it was a memorable effort. No, I'm sorry, Todd, to be bringing that up now, but it was a pretty good effort.
And also at that tie we had our Prime Minister and George Bush Senior was at that tie. So it was a very special occasion, and what a way to start a wonderful Davis Cup career by winning that match.
Yeah, we were now in the semi-final, and we had to play Russia in Brisbane, Australia, on grass. And there were a lot of things happen in that match.
Well, of course, they had 2 top 10 players, and we were without Philippoussis and Rafter, so Leighton took over the number 1 mantle and had to lead the team, and what a job he did. He defeated both Safin and Kafelnikov to win that tie for us.
Well, I remember we were leading 2 matches to 1, and Kafelnikov, who was number 2 in the world then, came into the press conference the night before and said, tomorrow I'm going to give Leighton Hewitt a tennis lesson. Well, Leighton took him out in 3 straight sets and then came to the press conference afterwards and said, has anybody here seen Yevgeny? And they said, well, no, but why? And he said, well, I got $50 here to pay him for the tennis lesson.
Yeah.
But it was a great effort, and of course we went on to win the Davis Cup that year in France.
Yeah, well, what a remarkable career Leighton has had. He was one of the youngest players to ever win an ATP Tour event in his hometown in Adelaide. He's still the youngest ever number 1 ATP ranked player at the end of the year. He won 2 Masters Series end of the season tournament. He won 2 Grand Slams, and of course his Davis Cup record is the greatest in Australian history. He's played more ties and won more matches than any other Australian, and we've had some great Davis Cup players.
Yeah, I well remember the following year in 2000 we played the finals against Spain, and Leighton on day one had to play Albert Costa, and it was an unbelievable match. It was a war out there, and Leighton finally led 5-4 in the 5th set serving, came around, got down love 40 on his serve and went to the back of the court and was yelling at the ground. And everybody wanted to know, why is he yelling at the ground? And what he was doing was he loved the Rocky movies. Rocky was his hero, and he used to put himself into that other person. So he was yelling at the ground, "Come on, Rocky, get up, Balboa, fight, come on, Rock." And he came out and won 5 straight points in a row. And finally, Tony, you remember the Starlight pro celebrity matches we used to put together?
Yes.
Yeah. And you remember Leighton was in love with Beck Cartwright?
Well, he requested, my wife at the time was getting the players, and you went to Sue and asked if she could get in touch with Beck Cartwright because Leighton wanted to play with her. So, of course, it's all history now. They've gone on and got married and have 3 wonderful children who are there today with Leighton, and they must be very proud of you, mate.
Yeah, and we're proud, Leighton, to have known you and to be able to spend some time with you. It was an honour for us. So, ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and welcome the new member to the International Tennis Hall of Fame, Leighton Hewitt.
And ladies and gentlemen, to present Leighton's Hall of Fame medal, as if it were not special enough to have him on that video from the class of 1986, his former coach and Davis Cup captain, Hall of Famer Tony Roach.
All right. It's hard to put things into words at the moment. I've had a little bit longer to try and come up with a speech for this, and it's been lucky because you think back 35 years or so since I first picked up a racket, and I think I needed that extra year to come up with some words. So I've written a reasonably long speech here, but I hope you don't mind. So firstly, I'd like to thank the International Tennis Hall of Fame. This is an incredible honour for me. I also want to thank them, and especially Stan Smith and Todd Martin, for delaying my induction by a year. I know it wasn't ideal the last couple of years due to the pandemic, but for me it's made it all that more special that I've been able to have my family and friends here on this occasion and really soak up the atmosphere. So thank you, guys. I want to recognise Dennis Vandermeer and the original 9 ladies as well, who I'm in the class of 2021 with. So sorry I couldn't be here last year, but it was always a connection that we'll have for many years to come in the Hall of Fame. So thank you. The Hall of Fame seemed like something that was so far away from me ever being part of. It was never something I ever thought about as a player, and it was always, I thought, for the people that were my idols growing up and the absolute legends of the sport. So when I got a call from Stan Smith to say I was nominated to potentially go into the Hall of Fame, it was a funny moment because, as Stan said, I was actually at an under-12s junior tennis tournament in the middle of nowhere in Pakenham near Melbourne, watching my son play a junior tournament. I had to ask Stan if he could hold on a minute so I could walk away from the court to have a chat so no one could hear what we were talking about. After that phone call, that's when it really started to sink in, that this is a pretty special thing. To think that this is where it all began for me, on junior tennis courts in the middle of nowhere in Adelaide in Australia, with nobody watching, no TV cameras, and then to make the full tennis journey and actually now be potentially coming into the Hall of Fame. I feel fortunate that I was able to play across different generations, that I was able to be on the same court as my heroes that I looked up to, like Andre Agassi and Pete Sampras, and then go on and compete against three of the greatest tennis players our sport has ever seen in Roger Federer, Rafael Nadal and Novak Djokovic. For me though, this is such a special place here in Newport. You feel the history and tradition of tennis as soon as you walk in here. I first came here as a 17-year-old playing the Newport event back in '98. I wasn't a massive fan of grass actually, and to be honest, where we're sitting now was actually where I played my first round match. I still remember against a Swiss guy, Lorenzo Manta. It was actually my first win ever on the tour on grass, and I was able to win that match. I lost second round against Jason Stoltenberg, but we won't worry about that. But my love for grass certainly changed over the years. Later on in my career, I came back to play here quite a few times and thoroughly enjoyed it. I came close a couple of times, losing in the final in 2012 and 2013, but that just made me more desperate, the kind of person that I was. I wanted to get my name on the trophy here and actually win where the Hall of Fame was played. I was able to do that in 2014. It ended up being the last title of my career, which I look back now and I'm so proud of. I think it's perfect. It's so fitting that it happened here in Newport. And believe it or not, in my 20-odd year career, I actually never won the singles and doubles at the same tournament ever. And that particular week in 2014, I did it. So my last title ever on centre court over there, I'll cherish forever, because I actually won the singles and then went out a couple of hours later and won the doubles with my Aussie mate Chris Guccione. So Newport will always hold a very special place in my heart, and this week just adds to it. I was a kid that loved sport. I was lucky growing up in Australia. We're sport for choice when it comes to all different kinds of sports. But as you saw in the video before, my number one sport was AFL football. Not rugby, not soccer, like every overseas person ever asked me, but it's a tough, true Australian team sport. My dad, my grandfather and my uncle all played it professionally, and that was my dream, to one day follow in their footsteps. I only first started tennis because my parents joined a local club, mainly for them just to stay active. But they were keen for me to start lessons, but were after a good coach that taught good technique from an early age. My parents did some research and they came up with Peter Smith. He had coached many top South Australian players, including John Fitzgerald and Peter Carter. So firstly, I want to thank Peter Smith and his family back in Adelaide. I first started with Peter at the age of 6. He coached at a small tennis club called Denman. He only had one time slot available, which is 7:30 a.m. on a Sunday morning for 1 hour. And so we took it and we never looked back. I ended up doing that 7:30 session every Sunday morning that I was in Adelaide, from the age of 6 till 16 when I went on the pro tour. We even quite often laugh now, because I had my normal Sunday morning session before I played in the ATP Tour Finals in Adelaide in '98, when I had to play Jason Stoltenberg about 4 hours later. That was actually the morning after I beat my idol Andre Agassi in the semi-finals. I would continually try to impress Peter, but nothing ever felt good enough back then. There were always things to improve, things to work on. But I look back now and I realise how important that mindset was. He kept me grounded and kept me striving to improve and keep getting better. Peter's oldest son, Brett, was like an older brother to me. My parents would organise for him to hit on the courts of my school in my lunch break. Brett would end up travelling with me on the tour for a number of years. So the whole Smith family has been a massive part of my tennis journey, and I wouldn't be here without their help and support, and especially from Peter and Brett. So I want to thank Smithies back in Adelaide. I had a few tour coaches over the years, so I want to thank all those tour coaches, but especially Darren Cahill. My parents got in touch with Darren when he was living back in Adelaide and just asked if I'd be able to hit with him occasionally. He was nice enough to give me a go. I'd go over and do some sessions with him on his backyard hard court. I must have hit a few in, because he ended up keep giving me the odd session, and that's how that relationship started. It wouldn't be until the end of '98 that I started travelling with Darren as my tour coach. We had plenty of things in common, but the biggest thing was our family's connection with AFL football, even though we absolutely hated each other's AFL teams. But it was really special that I could win my first Grand Slam in singles and doubles and get to world number 1 with a coach from my hometown of Adelaide. But not only do I have Darren to thank for the start of my professional career and all the help on court, but also for my nickname, Rusty. My family would often travel to tournaments with us, and this is where Darren came up with the nickname. He thought my family was like the Griswolds in the Chevy Chase movie, National Lampoon's Vacation, and the son's name was Rusty. As you can imagine, all the older players started using it, and so it just stuck. So thanks heaps also for that killer. And just a quick thanks to a past Hall of Famer, Mats Wilander. I became well known for my come-ons on the court and my celebration sign. But I actually stole this from Mats when I was in juniors. Not many people knew, but Mats was the one who started it, and it was called the Visht, and he did it from Sweden. But I loved going and watching Mats at every Australian Open when he would interact with the Swedish fans in the crowd. So it was nice that in the end, when I spoke about it with Mats, he was actually happy for me to continue on with his sign. But for some reason, I was the one that sort of got known with it, especially in Australia. I want to thank all my Davis Cup captains, John Fitzgerald, Pat Rafter, and of course, my first captain, John Newcombe, who introduced me. Nuke's already told the story, so he's taken half my lines here, but the first time I met Nuke was actually at his tennis ranch, as he said, in New Braunfels, Texas, and I was a young teenager. The one thing I remember that he spoke about was when I did ask him to do that sit-down interview for a school assignment. He said, "No worries, mate." But the biggest thing he told me was about the famous Kipling poem, If, and especially about those famous 2 lines that are written above the walkway out on the centre court at Wimbledon. If you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those 2 imposters just the same. The next day, Newt gave me a printout of that If poem and highlighted the 2 lines in the poem and said, "This is what you'll see soon when you get to play on Wimbledon centre court in a few years." I always kept that note from Nuke. It was such a special moment when I got to experience walking out on the centre court at Wimbledon for the first time in '99. It was in the 3rd round and I was playing the great Boris Becker. I didn't win that day, but I loved being out there and I loved the experience that came with the tradition of walking out on the centre court, and all I wanted to do was get another crack at it one day. So thanks, Nuke, for all your support over the years, mate. I love nothing more than going into battle with you, so thanks, mate. I want to thank all the past Australian players that were on the tour when I first started. It wasn't easy for me being a 16-year-old and going straight on the ATP tour. I was so fortunate to have a whole heap of older Aussie guys that were on the singles and doubles circuit at that particular time, and they would take me under their wing. Sandon, Florrie, Bully, Teddy, Scotty, and plenty more. But the one other main guy was Pat Rafter. Pat was like an older brother to me and someone that I totally idolised and looked up to. So you can imagine how pumped I was sitting courtside as an orange boy at the '97 Davis Cup tie against France in Sydney when I was only 15 and Pat's leading the charge. After the match, he actually asked if I'd go down to Bondi Beach with him to do a recovery session in the ocean. I said, was he kidding? Of course I would. That was every Aussie kid's dream. So from that day on, all I wanted to do was wear the green and gold and play Davis Cup for Australia. There was something special about that competition for me. Tennis is such an individual sport for so many months of the year, and I think that's why Davis Cup was so important to me. It was my way of playing AFL football, but in the sport of tennis. Standing side by side with your teammates, your captain, your coach, and knowing that you're going into battle for something more important than just yourself. So you can imagine how pumped I was to get the call up from Nuke in '99, like he said, when I was going to play for Australia against USA in Boston at the Longwood Cricket Club. So I'm sorry, Todd, but it was, I had it in my speech as well, but it was an unbelievable day for me, and it really was a dream come true. The number 89 would forever be a meaningful number for me. I was the 89th player to represent Australia in the Davis Cup after being handed my gold jacket. This was an incredible honour, but more importantly, I knew the responsibility I had by being given this chance. I was fortunate to be playing for a country that had such a rich history in tennis and the Davis Cup competition, and had so many past greats that I could look up to. I had some of my proudest moments and best moments in the sport of Davis Cup, but also some of my toughest losses. So I want to thank all my Davis Cup teammates, a couple of them are here today, for the years of sacrifice that they made in choosing to represent Australia with me. And I wouldn't be receiving this honour today if it wasn't for this bloke. Rochi, mate, it means so much to me that you made the effort to make the long trek over from here, from Australia, to be here with me today. I've been so fortunate to have you as a coach, mentor, and more importantly, to be able to call you a mate. What you've done for Australian tennis is second to none. In my opinion, you are the greatest coach, but it's the culture that you've created through the Australian Davis Cup team that sets the tone for the future generations of Australian tennis. You've done it for decades now. We've been through a lot together, mate, on and off the court. We've helped each other out through some really tough times and celebrated the great moments. Some of my favourite times with you were on the practice court. I must have been bloody crazy because I loved all the brutal sessions you put me through. First as a 15-year-old, doing non-stop 2-on-1 drills at Davis Cup ties with absolutely no drink break during the session. Or then as a 30-year-old veteran doing pre-season training at Kenthurst in Sydney in over 40-degree heat. One thing's for sure, you would always have me prepared as well as possible to go into battle. I'm forever grateful, mate, because I would never have been the player I was without your guidance. But just importantly, I want to keep helping to pass on your knowledge, work ethic and passion for Australian tennis to the future generations. Thanks, Rochi. Two of my closest tennis mates that are here today, Peter Luchak and Jamin Crab. You two guys have always had my back, either when you were coaching me, being a part of my coaching team with the Aussie DC squad, or just as mates off the court. I appreciate your loyalty so much and the little things that you've done for me and my family over the years. Thanks for being here today with your families, mate, over this weekend. Thank you. And to a couple of other people that weren't able to make it today that are back in Australia, a big shout out to two people. As you can imagine, with my body and the second half of my career, I had a lot of injuries and surgeries, and there's a lot of work that goes into putting a body like that back together to be able to go out and try and compete close to 100%. So I want to thank Ivan Gutierrez, my physio, and my fitness trainer Nathan Martin, who are back in Australia. They know how much I love them and appreciate everything that they've done for me over the years, so thank you guys. And then to my best mate, Hayden Eckerman from Adelaide. Your loyalty and genuine support was second to none. Loyalty is something that I hold dearest than anything. It was so special that you were able to be there when I won Wimbledon in 2002 and I was able to climb up to you guys in the crowd and you were able to be a part of it, so thanks, mate. I want to thank Mum and Dad. I'm not sure where they are, somewhere. You guys gave me the best opportunity to chase my dream of being a professional tennis player. Like I said earlier, thanks for getting me into the sport of tennis. Who would have thought that all those early Sunday mornings would lead us to be here today? Thanks for making the effort to find the best coach in Peter Smith, and for also not caring too much about my schooling, even though Mum was a teacher. And Dad, thanks always for believing in me and putting your own career on hold to travel with me when I needed you most, when I was 16 and had no coach to go on the tour with me. Also for taking Jaslyn, my sister, and I to the Australian Open every year as kids, which gave me the inspiration I needed to try and play at this level and be able to play in these big tournaments. What made all my big wins more special was the fact that you guys were there. You've played such a massive role in my tennis journey and always done what was best for me and my family, so thank you. And my sister Jaslyn, you've always been my biggest supporter ever since we were kids, and you continue to go out of your way to help support Beck and my kids, so I couldn't thank you enough. Also, Jaslyn made a round-the-world trip to help bring my son here so he could be here this weekend. So she's gone beyond, so thanks, Jazz. I can't thank you enough for doing that. There's a few other friends that are here that have made a massive effort to come from Australia, Bahamas and other parts of America to be here today. So I'd also like to thank Tom, Chuck, Pat and Jenna for being here and celebrating this. Thanks, guys. And also Kath. We have a great relationship. You've helped out me and my family so many times. I don't know how many conversations you've had with Anne-Marie here at the Hall of Fame to make this weekend possible. So thank you very much for everything you've done. Lastly, but most importantly, I want to thank my beautiful wife, Beck, and our 3 gorgeous kids, Mia, Cruz and Ava. I know how hard it was at times to travel with 3 young kids, especially on the long flights back and forth from Australia, but you were incredible and always found a way to make it work. It was such a special time though, and I love travelling as a little family around the world and being on that adventure together. I'm so fortunate to have you, Beck. You are the most hands-on mum ever and the best wife, and have always supported me with everything. I'm so proud of the 3 kids and how they've grown up, and so much of that is due to you. To Mia, Cruz and Ava, thanks for being here today, guys. I know it hasn't been easy to work out all the logistics to get us all here with all your activities around the world, but it means the absolute world to me. The most special thing about this weekend has been able to spend it with you guys, so thank you. And I just want to thank all the past Hall of Famers for being here this weekend. It wouldn't be the same if you guys weren't here, and I didn't have people to look up to that had done it before me as well. So it's been an unbelievable experience for me, the whole build-up the last couple of years, but especially this weekend. And I think it's so fitting for me to be inducted here in Newport at such a special place. So thank you, everyone. Thanks a lot.
Ladies and gentlemen, keep it going for official Hall of Famer Leighton Hewitt. We'll be back to Newport in just a moment.